Naomi, can you pray for us?
Lord, we desire to give you our hearts and our minds. Lord, I pray that we would begin to practice this every moment of our life. Lord, that we would truly give you our all. Lord, I'm thankful for each life that is willing to be your light and to be your will. May we continue to honor you, Father, in all that we do and say. Lord, may your kingdom be in our hearts and lived out in our lives. Bless your name. Amen.
Actually, I was curious if you guys could fill me in a little on what you talked about yesterday. Unfortunately, I had missed that conversation. Isaac said he recorded it, but I have not seen it yet.
I'm guessing you're talking about when the younger people met together.
Tuesday school.
Okay. Yeah, I was a part of the adults meeting.
Oh, that's
So I'll
right,
have to,
you would.
I would actually like to hear what they talked about too, because I wasn't a part of it.
We talked about a couple different things pertaining to Culture Center. Nothing super formal. It was more kind of some thoughts on, or just anyone's thoughts about the time in general. That's what I started off with, and then we kind of talked about our general thoughts of the time and what effect it was having on not just our lives, like there in the time, but also like outside of the time. And some people offered some thoughts about that. And then I had brought up the question of like what some things, if anyone had anything of what they would want to change about that time. And then, yeah, there was nothing specific though. There's a lot of just comments on different things people were experiencing and some thoughts and like things they had benefited from that time. Isaac, do you have anything you want to say about it?
It was good to hear from everyone just in relation to why a lot of them struggle with speaking up or engaging in a certain way. And I think almost everyone talked.
That's
like
really
willingly. Yeah. And so it was just good to get to hear from everyone, even if it was a shorter time. But we just kind of talked about our way of relating to each other and really seeking, how the Lord wants to change that, and also how, what needs to change with the engagement in those times where we are all together, and why it's hard to speak up in those times. So
Was there a general consensus as to why that meeting was different? Like why people felt more willing to speak up?
I mean, I'd kind of started the meeting with like, it seems like a lot of us are not in a place where we have nothing to say. And I think that was generally agreed upon. And a lot of the times when I actually asked specific people by name, like I asked them to share something, they had something to say.
And that was what you kind of did.
I didn't have to do that with everyone.
For a few people.
Yeah, but that kind of got the ball rolling.
I think that's beneficial, by the way. That's not like, that's me thinking that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes people need a little nudge.
Well, and when they do have a nudge, it reveals that there is something there. There's something on their heart. There's something that they're probably close to saying, but are
Yeah.
doubting themselves for
That's
some reason.
what we kind of found was probably the biggest change that needs to happen is I personally don't know what the hesitancy is because not only what they have to say is is something like valid to what we're talking about, but it's also like I don't know, there's this thing where people say I don't want to sound a certain way or something, or I don't think it's worth saying, but I don't know, I don't even see that as the case. I'm not sure what it is that is has that hold on some people in our time together, but that is definitely something that needs to not happen anymore. It's been going on for far too long.
I think part of that, and it's just from my observation and what I have heard from others, and I don't necessarily think anybody is at fault for it, I just think it's something that is happening, is that I think there is fear of correction. And what that normally means is it's not necessarily super, I think the biggest thing that comes to mind is when someone says something sometimes that's a little off, or that has the right heart but maybe not the right words, or whatever. A lot of times Tim or yourself will correct that person, not necessarily in a mean-spirited way at all. Most of the time both of you will say that, oh, you're not wrong, but let me just add this little thing. And I think I have noticed that makes people feel like they said something wrong, even if that's not the case. I have noticed that there is a fear of being wrong in the presence of certain people that adds to that, I should say, that stifling atmosphere. Because I don't think that's the sole contributor, but I have noticed that even with the adults, there's a little bit of a fear of I'm not sure if this is correct. I'm not sure if I can say this, or if I'm gonna get, corrected on this. So I think that's part of that.
Yeah, for sure. But I think also, I don't know. I feel like we should have come to the point by now where people know that there's no condemnation, right?
I think, but
I mean, it's a different process for different people, for
Yeah.
sure.
I don't know. I honestly don't know the right words, and I also have limited understanding because it's not something I experience. If
Mhm.
I felt this way, I could definitely speak a lot more on it, but
Yeah.
I most of the time actually welcome being corrected. 'Cause
Right, yeah, I
I
guess
like being told I'm wrong. But
I know I was in that play a long time ago, early in
Mhm.
some before we had Culture Center.
Mm.
I felt that that pressure not to want to say something, not to want to pray in front of everyone. But the back of my head was always I know that everyone would really not just like it, but be with me if I spoke up. That's what I always thought, and I knew that would be the case, and it always was the case. Even if, and I don't even know, there probably was a correction at some points, but I don't know. I guess I was never afraid of that, but I can say that's something I definitely had to get over.
Yeah.
So I definitely understand where they're coming from. It's not that I think it's bad what they're doing, but
Sure.
it's I don't know. I just wonder in the time moving forward how we're gonna
Get over
overcome
it, for
that.
sure. It definitely is an immature, an area we have to grow in.
Yeah.
That's for certain. I'm actually curious. I'm not sure if it would be related, but I know it's a spirit that has come up several times within just different people in our community. But I wonder if partly that is to blame to a Leviathan spirit that might be, I think, twisting a lot of that. What is most of the time actually adding to the discussion, and I'm referring to correction and things such as
Yeah.
that. I wonder if there actually is something, there's some sort of twisting going on there that's actually making it different than the reality.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, it's such an easy thing to be deceived by too. It's it's in your mind. So I think definitely changing. I think what's going to help in that is changing our overall perspective of the time,
Agreed.
because it's gonna change how you walk in the door, and it's gonna change how you receive everything moving forward. And I think, yeah, that definitely has to do with familiarity and
Mhm.
those very easily deceiving things,
Yeah.
which have to be changed, and starting the fundamentals of even just waking up and getting up and what kind of mind you're bringing
Mhm.
into any time. But this time is especially important in that because right, it's going to make a difference.
Mhm.
And that needs to be realized too. I think there's also a lack of a realization of the importance of that, and the thought, like, why can't I just wake up 5 minutes before I need to go and stroll into the door? Like, but it makes a difference.
Mhm.
It's not that you just get here on time. It's that you need to be there in the right way.
Mhm. For sure.
Yeah,
dude.
the consistent, okay, whatever. What was shared by a decent amount of people in that time was that I think there is some kind of twisting going on there, but that they start with something to share, but a lot of it is overthought, and they continue to think and dwell on it, and then by the end of it, they've convinced themselves that it's not worth sharing at all. And so I think there is a lot of fear of man there,
Mhm.
and I don't know, in a lot of ways I see that we still need to build a greater trust for one another,
Mhm.
that there is no doubt in any of our minds that we are for each other in that way.
Mhm.
And I still think the familiar spirit gets in the way there, to where that questions that trust,
Mhm.
and it causes that divide between us, to where it creates that hesitancy to share.
Mhm.
And so I think that's another thing that I think the Lord is changing, or wants to change. And I think another encouragement, even to come along with what Elijah was saying, it is an importance of that time, but it's also not to put the culture center time on a pedestal,
Mhm.
as if it is like the answer, or something that is, I mean, as helpful as it is, it does not compare to the little things in life.
Mhm.
And I think that's what mainly was on Naomi's heart, what she brought up a couple times,
Yeah.
was a focus on how that time is to help cultivate a way of life, but is not going to be the answer to it.
Great.
That time is not going to be beneficial if our way of life does not reciprocate what we are learning and what we are being shown.
100%.
And I think that was a sentiment from talking to my dad about the time you guys had as adults. What your dad was also talking about too was family culture and the little things within family dynamics, and the little things in life far outweigh any meaningful spiritual time that we have together, just because of how often those little things in life happen.
Mhm.
And so that was another good encouragement and reminder as well.
I took the words right out of my mouth. I was just about to say that.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was thinking as well. Just kind of, I think the way family dynamic and just the way we relate to one another outside of a like a formal time
Yeah.
that's gonna impact how we interact together on Tuesdays.
In light of that, on my way back from when I was taking him home from our gathering on Tuesday, and then also I took him on a little birthday meal date, I was having some really good conversations with Niles,
Mhm.
and he is someone I think that really, I think is a good example in exactly that, of I think someone that really struggles during those meeting times,
Mhm.
but that I can't help but be encouraged by, because I see a genuine upward trend in those little things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that makes me a lot more prone to, instead of being like, oh, there's something wrong with Niles, it's okay, maybe there's something wrong with the time. He, when I was talking with him, he mentioned there is definitely familiarity that's difficult for him there,
Mhm.
and all the things, but I it was so funny now that I'm thinking about it. He actually, like, we ended up talking about that very same thing you guys were talking about, and I don't even think we knew. But he mentioned that he really wants to try and approach those times in a different way. I was curious if you guys, like, I don't know, was there practical talk about things regarding Tuesday? Things that to kind of, I guess, change up this familiar way that we go into it? Or was it mostly kind of like talking about generalities?
I wouldn't say there's anything particularly practical. I mean, but I can. What I was very encouraged to see in that time was some certain, like Elisa kind of surprised me in that time personally. I mean, as someone I don't really interact with a lot,
Doesn't talk a whole lot. Yeah.
but she talked a lot in
That's
that
cool.
time, and like she's. What surprised me is to see how much she actually cares and thinks about it, and not to just single her out, but that made me realize that there definitely are others besides her who think in that way, like Niles, who someone I don't really know the mind of. But what I was encouraged to see is others really taking that time as something that is very important to their lives, especially at that age. Like, you see other people that age and it's like they're still like in the 4 years old zone of life, but like it's I wouldn't say things super practical, that because that's what I thought people were gonna bring forward when I asked, like, what are some things you guys would want to change.
Sure. Yeah.
And there may have been some hesitancy to say anything because people may have thought they didn't have the place to say what could change.
That makes sense.
But I think what was brought forth to change and what kind of the general consensus was a heart attitude towards
sure.
the time. But I see a lot of us young people really do have a desire to have, even if they don't have the right heart posture at times. I mean, I struggle with that for sure. I'm
One
not
thing
out of
that I
that.
know
But
too is going to change how we interact with each other in certain times is how we see each other. And that's going to come from how we interact with each other all the time. And it's going to depend on what we do in our free time too, like with each other, because it's going to affect those times that we're all together. And Tuesday, today, because how we interact with each other is like, and how we see each other in general will.
So it creates culture.
Right. So I think it's really important too that we are very considerate with what we do all the time with each other, and how that is affecting our familiarity in general and our relationships. And that's definitely one thing I'm working on in myself towards everybody, because that is one thing that can get in the way of, and affects me, I guess, is my familiarity with people and how a part of that can be the fear of man, but I think in a way it's how we think we should be and how we think we should talk or say things. But if we see each other in a different way and we're interacting right in a new way, then I think that's going to definitely change the way that we're all interacting with each other, I guess.
No, and I think alongside that, it isn't even necessarily the what with interacting with each other, it's the how very often. I think that I have had like such meaningful interactions with Benji and Elijah, for instance, doing very menial things. Very, like, I think that the what often matters so little when it comes to even just hanging out, you know? But I do think the how is really what matters there. And I don't even think it's necessarily this, like, false pressure of, like, this, oh, we've gotta keep it, you know, above board here.
Well, what's the motive
But
of what you're doing?
agreed. I think that there is like a openness that we all need to be able to have with one another and with each other's spiritual progress in that life. Because I know that, for instance, with you, we're not exactly, fishing right off the get-go to have deep conversations, but we just naturally trend that way most of the time. Because that's what's on both of our hearts. And we're both open to the possibility of that just kind of naturally coming up in dialogue. And I think that's very beautiful. Because it doesn't create this like false pressure of like, oh, I'm with Benji, I need to be this certain way. No, this is how I see Benji. This is how I enjoy interacting with Benji. This is how Benji and I come together and just talk with one another. That's what just happens, right? Even when we're, doing science experiments.
Yeah, that's fine.
And there's nothing bad with being with each other again. I think it's about how we're choosing to go about those times.
Agreed, yes.
And our mindsets
Mhm.
and motives behind being with each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the Lord has put all of us together for a reason, so it's not.
I mean,
Yeah.
we used to wonder why mom and dad didn't. We would fight so much against mom and dad letting us go do things with other people, and never understood why. But I think, remember, soul food, the soul food.
Wait, what?
Remember it?
Now I need to be.
You don't remember that?
I don't know.
How do you not remember
Fill us
that?
in, fill us in.
Soul food is like feeding the soul, like things that.
Because
feed
we,
I get that, but
when
I mean,
our
what's
old,
the
we used
context?
our old friend groups.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I guess that's probably something Dad said more to some
Yeah.
people than to others. That's why I don't.
You would used to. Okay, anyways. I remember Caleb Corey finding it funny because you said it to him.
Wait, thank you.
Anyways, a little off topic, but like I mean, back in our old friend groups, we used to have our little, everyone has their little crushes and stuff.
Sure,
Like,
sure.
that was the motive, right?
With hanging out.
At the end of the day, that was the motive
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
most of those friend groups,
Mhm.
and that mom and dad knew that. So we were a little restrained in that,
That
not,
makes sense.
and that's definitely not what most parents do to their kids. So we were like really didn't understand. We thought we were being robbed in such a huge way, and it really frustrated us for a good. Well, I feel like mostly me and Naomi,
Sure.
but for a good amount of years, and it took some time to understand that. But that's really what it is.
Sure.
We learn to look at. I'd say only very recently I've actually understood. I think back, I just came to an acceptance of and trust of my parents, and knowing that what they were doing for us wasn't because they wanted to be controlling. It was because were meant to live a set apart life.
Mm.
But now I'm more understanding it was because of the motive, right? What we're talking about. And that time wasn't very fruitful. It wasn't. I mean, I'd say we have learned a lot from our past relationships for sure, and there's a lot of beneficial things that have come out of that even so.
Me
But
too.
yeah, it does make a difference when you really know someone. And honestly now I don't, unless God is really leading you to interact with somebody, and like I don't have much desire to go a certain distance with people when they can't reach that level,
Agreed. Yeah.
because it feels very empty.
Mhm.
And I'm confident that the Lord will bring many more relationships that will be intentional in our lives. But
I think the ones that come about by natural consequence, like for instance, working with someone like Corbin,
yeah,
I think is a great example
Right.
of like things that the Lord is pushing.
and yeah, people like Corbin, well, they can go to a deeper level, which is it's interesting to see some people.
It's mostly the desire to.
Right.
Even if, say like Al Corbin, but there are others, don't necessarily like know how or even what that is or what they're doing or what they're even liking about certain people. But the fact that there is that desire there and a curiosity of sorts, even if it's slightly misguided. I mean, who wouldn't it have been on, right?
Yeah.
If you've never known this kind of stuff. But I think that is very honoring to the Lord. Not only on our parts to reciprocate with that interaction, but to someone like that for being curious in the first place.
Yeah. I mean, think about his motive
Mhm.
too, and it's to benefit his life,
Mm-hmm.
because he sees something that is not only different from other things that he's experience, but it's also something that he knows is good.
It was so funny. I was talking with him the other day, and we were kind of just talking about, you know, work and life and all those things. We have really weird conversations, but I remember, like, I think somehow, like, Benji and Leon came up in the conversations, like, other two dishwashers. I'm like, oh yeah, man, like, you'd be a lot better off here if you had a car, because then you could go make pies at Joyce and Co. And he's like, yeah, and then I'd be able to attend the poetry tea times. And that was, like, obviously misguided, but the fact that that was, like, the first thing on his
He
heart.
said that to me too.
Yeah, that's
He wants
like,
to be
It's
in poetry.
offended that we
It's like
He wants to be in
invite
poetry
those.
meeting.
he had heard that we do that, and in his head, it's like, if I get a car, I can see what's up there. Even if that's misguided and, you know, a little off.
Yeah.
That is extremely beautiful to me, that, like, that's genuinely the first thing on his heart with that.
Yeah.
And I think that's his primary motivation for trying to learn how to drive right now, which is awesome to me.
I've been telling my dad, like, I had one conversation with him. That guy is seeking out truth, and he doesn't. I don't even think he. knows
That's
what
his
that
that's
means.
his bio on Discord.
What?
Oh yeah, that's
What
right.
is it?
Something about seeking truth. I
That's
don't-
insane. I just didn't feel it from him.
It's like
I-
seeking
It's
truth,
like-
the wise find its profound absence.
I would,
Yeah.
I mean, he's going to church with Anna. He's trying to find.
I would
But, like-
be wondering, like, what, I don't know what the intro there would be, or if he should have a conversation with your dad first, but I would be willing even to drive him to certain places if it means, like, I am seeing a genuine desire there. And I will 100%, I can pick him up from Granny's every, you know, however often he needs to facilitate that, but I would love to support him in
I
that.
heard Dad actually specifically saying some people could join certain times, and we can talk about that later. But
Well, I mean, what's more, unless you.
I would talk to my dad.
Okay,
before, just
sure.
to make sure.
No, that's understandable. Yeah, okay. But
There was an
100%.
invitation that he told me that people like Corbin and Peyton who are interested
Mhm.
can join us in
Yeah.
this conversation.
Okay.
I don't know if it was this time or I don't know, but
Sure. Yeah, no, I agreed though. I see that a lot with, I don't know Peyton as well, but I definitely see that with Corbin.
yeah.
Also, on the speakings of joining certain things, I was having, like I said, some conversations with Niles, and he, by name, mentioned this time and being curious, like, what the qualifications to join are. And I remember when I was previously talking with your dad, it's kind of like people who are transitioning to that more adult stage of life. And Niles is about to become a full driver, which I think is, in a lot of ways, he's more of an adult than I am. He works more than I do. I was curious what the heart of all of you guys would be of Niles joining this time. I would have to ask him formally. He seemed to be wanting to, but I didn't pose it to him because I didn't know if that's available to him or not. But I'm curious to hear what you guys think about that. If anybody has any thoughts.
Yeah, I do think this is one of those times that more people can participate in, so that includes people like Corbin and I Peyton too, I guess, if that was something Dad had mentioned to you. But he had mentioned this time as being potentially available for Corbin, so
Oh, interesting. Okay.
yeah.
I'd say for Niles, if he thinks he should be here, then he should.
I think Niles is not assuming enough to think he should be anywhere, but I think he is curious and desiring to. He also mentioned the Young Brothers thing, and I said I actually have no clue about that.
Yeah.
But I know that this time, with the qualifications that your dad gave to like the types of people he wants in this meeting, Niles is definitely fits that bill, probably even more than I do, quite honestly.
Yeah, I don't think any of us would have any hesitation for Niles to be
Yeah,
here.
I'll mention it
Absolutely.
to him. Do you think your dad is the right person for Niles to get into contact with at that? Or would it be with
I'm-
you?
Yeah, I don't see this as like a closed off group
No,
at
I
all,
don't.
so I can mention it to my dad, but we can definitely see if Niles would be interested in participating if
Yeah.
he's available to on these days.
Yeah, I think today, he normally does not work. Right now he is working, but I think he
Yeah.
just happened to take it because might as
Okay.
well. But yes, I will extend that offer to him. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would also love to hear what the next steps for that Corbin thing is. I feel like he is also a very unassuming person, and so he only steps so far as he's invited to. And so I think if we have a heart for that, I think we need to extend that olive leaf to him first. I don't think that's something he's just gonna outright like ask directly if he could join. I think he's already done the closest equivalent of that.
It's asked a couple times.
That's what to you?
Yeah.
Interesting. What's been your response there, or thoughts on it even?
I mean, the other day he expressed a strong desire to meet and talk with you more, Noah. But again, he still thinks it's like inconveniencing you, so he's afraid to ask. But he like wanted you to like come pick him up and take him to lunch, and he was telling me how like afraid he was to ask you. I was like, it would not be an
You're
inconvenience.
intimidating.
Didn't he ask you?
Yeah, he's. We're supposed to call
That's good.
tomorrow.
Oh, that's awesome.
I think he heeded my encouragement, which is good.
Well, he actually was like literally dragged out of the kitchen by Cheryl.
That's
That's what actually happened.
That's actually really good.
You told me about it too after he came back in the kitchen. He's like, I finally asked you.
He was telling him right there. I got stuck with it.
He's funny.
You're such a scary guy, Noah.
Yeah, I didn't
Intimidating.
get that at all. It surprised me, but
I think he can tell, like, generally people have a lot of reverence towards you. And so I think that just creates, like, with respect sometimes can be doubled with
I
fear.
don't know if that's necessarily the case. I think,
I just, from what I can observe, I think a lot of people hold you
he's
in
just
high
a nervous guy.
He is, certainly. I just think it's also, yeah, just with respect sometimes can come fear.
No.
What stuck out in the time with the adults yesterday? I know that you had mentioned some things practically changing with your class and some stuff that the Lord had put on your heart to kind of change direction in.
Well, I'm curious about that.
Well, the last half of the discussion, I guess the bulk of it, was my dad going into some things you guys mentioned moments ago with how we are changing the family culture at home, and that's really the essence of what we're doing, whether it's related to the culture center time or not. And that was something. I mean, I know that's not like a new topic for any of us, because it has to do not just with what we're doing, but more specifically the way that we are doing those things together. Because family culture and the culture of God's house has to do with, the way we function as a people and the way that we go about and build and nourish and cultivate is a really big word that was used by both meetings yesterday. Our relationships. And something that has been on my heart for a very long time that I've always been a little apprehensive about, because it's kind of a big thing for me to ever approach as a subject of teaching, is Chinese culture, which we are more or less doing
Okay.
the first class of Tuesday time. But Emmanuel had told me on several occasions that it would be something I would teach, so it almost feels not just like an interest of mine, but like an assignment. I don't really know fully what that will look like yet, but I don't think it will be like necessarily a replacement of writing as a subject, but something that will
Come alongside.
be incorporated into that class.
If it's any confirmation, I was feeling a similar desire just the other day. So
What's that?
I was actually yesterday feeling a similar desire and looking into such things. So
Yeah, there have been several people that have expressed that same desire, like Andy and others. He had tried to see if he could start a separate time where we would go over stuff like that, but that was like a year or more ago.
that'd be killer with people's schedules in the winter, definitely. But
Yeah, but I bring that up because that would be, or is, a subject where those things like developing a more cultural and communal awareness and conscience in all that we do is that is enhanced by that kind of study, because I told the parents yesterday that studying Chinese culture sounds like a very funny thing to say, because it kind of seems very random and irrelevant, even for those of us who have tasted a bit of what that tends to involve, like among those who have participated in the Analects time, because it's not a matter of conveying the thoughts and opinions and philosophies of a very different people in a very different time and place. But in addition to the fact that it is frankly something the Lord himself has brought into our attention and awareness through Emmanuel originally, and the fact that those people in ancient times, as I think applies to other cultures of an early period, were influenced, were inspired and enlightened by God. It's a really interesting study on Chinese civilization. But in addition to those things, it is something, that kind of study, particularly in something like the Analects, is it's bringing to the forefront things that tend to be so near and close and familiar to us that we don't really, we're not able to healthily examine and maybe I could even say objectify them. Not objectify in the sense that they just become intellectual subjects, but objectify in that we're able to see them, examine them more clearly as something that is working constantly in our individual lives, but more so in the network of relations that we all participate in. So things like what does it actually mean? Not as something imposed by, Western or social ideas, but what does it actually mean to be a good student or a good son or a good father, brother or sister or peer? How do those look like in practice, and what function and purpose do they serve in the body of a community? What are they designed for, and how do you cultivate them, and what is the heart behind them originally, and what is being expressed through them that applies to more even than the practical working out of that relationship, but like what is the greater message, heart being expressed through them. And I was telling them too, it's not going to ever be a matter for me of trying to validate a text like the Analects by drawing a bunch of scriptural parallels. I know those parallels are there, and they're very significant and helpful, but it will never be in an attempt to validate a text, because that's not the point. The point is to bring something as before the young people especially, as something to think about, something to be serious about, to treat as a lesson, a life lesson that we can all engage in together, in even like a studying sort of way. Because obviously the things that we will learn most substantially will come through life practice, like we were saying, or we've said over and over again. It's not going to be in those particular times on Tuesday per se, but there's still a purpose in the set apart times that we mull over something together. It will be a time of inspiration is what those times are for. It's a time of consideration or even reconsideration of things. And this is tying back, and this is my last point to make, to bring everything together. What I'm talking about now and what you guys were talking about earlier, as far as some of the things you discussed as a group upstairs. But I think it's the issue is much less an issue of people not sharing or why they're not sharing even. But that is a much smaller result or consequence of a much deeper issue, which has to do with the way, I guess I can use the word again, the culture of honor that we have active in our midst. This was a thought that came to me the other day, but we actually aren't able to make distinctions among one another. We aren't able to speak to one another in a way that would be ultimately constructively critical, because we've actually lost a culture of honor, not because we've gained some culture of respect that would keep us from doing those sorts of things. Like, I just look at someone like Confucius and the relationship that he had with the students, that his students had with one another. Confucius had no problem saying, "This is the best student I have. You guys can learn from him." We can't even do that today, because that would offend everybody. Everybody would get kind of upset if anything like that was communicated. But again, I don't see that as being a result of some deep respect we all have for each other, but actually because of a deep insecurity we have regarding one another. If that deep respect and honor was there, then something like that would only move our hearts to want to understand why that is. Like, one of the most familiar analects to me is one we've actually gone over, where Confucius, or I guess a student of Confucius, came up to him. I don't remember exactly what was said, I guess, but he said something like, what do you think about Yan Hui? You guys know that young,
Yes.
very talented student that died early on, and Confucius basically said, "Oh yeah, he's smarter than you, and he's smarter than me too." Nobody can match his ability to grasp what I say so quickly and learn so many other things at once, things that I'm not even teaching at that moment. He's able to grasp something I teach at that moment and then connect it to other things and learn 3 times as much, and then put it into practice. So that this kind of comparison, we always talk about comparison as a negative thing, and usually the heart behind it is negative, right? But in a culture of honor, comparison is done constructively and in love and in a proactive rather than a reactive way of offense. So I bring all that up to say that if a culture of honor is truly instilled and established in the midst of our people, especially the young people, then whether or not people are speaking is never going to be the issue. We may have some very beautiful and enlightened silences. In fact, much of the time it may be silent, maybe even more silent than it currently is, but it will be no longer an issue of nobody speaking up, so this is not productive. Nobody has the right mindset in this. But it will be a matter of, we have some very open and receiving and attentive hearts. And their response, what they really speak in answer to what is being taught to them is very loud in their daily life and at home. Maybe we should actually have quieter classes. But again, it's not the volume of the class to me, whether or not there's people responding a lot or zipping their lips a lot. It's the culture of honor that's behind all of that. That's what is actually, I'm not even going to say just needing to change. I think it is changing. We're seeing that happen. and that is what I want to. This subject is what I actually want to eventually bring to the table, not just something going on in the background, being discussed between a few people at a time, but like bring this very thing that I'm talking about as a subject of conversation and study, even examination, a topic point of conversation, a subject of essay and poetry writing. You know what I'm saying? Like not exhausting it, because the subject is very inexhaustible. So that's what we can anticipate, I think.
We wrote an essay about honor kind of recent, right?
Yeah, and it is one of those subjects that you could write many essays on, because you'll be learning more about it. The more it serves as the foundation of your life and what you do with others, the way you perceive yourself, and everything you do. It's a very dynamic subject, but not one that changes in its meaning, just one that is ever broadened in its scope. Anyways.
I was kind of thinking, it's cool that you were mentioning that about honor, because I was thinking about that yesterday a lot, about learning how to honor each other, so I was just relating with what you're saying, is kind of what was on my mind.
But I am definitely still wanting to keep. I don't think we really ever will be rid of creative projects like essay writing and poetry, because that's always been.
Those are one of my favorite things we do.
Yeah,
I really like that.
that's probably not going anywhere. But.
Even if it was just like do poetry at home and talk about honor and.
Plus, the thing
Chinese
is,
culture in
I
class.
would hope at this point that you guys.
Oh, I already am writing all the time poetry. I just like sharing
Good.
it in class. I really
Yeah.
appreciate the feedback.
I've actually started to try to write. I've been journaling a lot more, and I'm going to be trying to write a poem a week.
Also,
Oh, wow.
I'm curious. Most of the time, like, would it be weird
Just
if
journaling
like someone
poems.
like sent you a poem? Was like, I made this poem for you. Is that like a weird thing to do?
Why?
No, I've
I
actually
just-
thought about doing that.
I
Have
write
you made one
poems.
for me
I write
yet?
poems for people, and then I like feel like
I want
weird about. I don't know.
Have you written me?
I don't know why that would
Nice.
be weird.
I don't know.
Send me.
I
I've
just wanted to
literally,
double check.
I've literally
Same
thought about
poem.
it at the same time.
That's so wholesome.
Me and Isaac write poems to each other every
Okay,
once in a
I
while.
like those.
Oh, they're good poems. They're
Yeah, 21,000 words.
Elijah could probably write you a really good
I
poem.
believe that, as long as it's not the copy and paste feature involved.
No, that's not what I mean by
Oh,
that.
okay.
Me and Isaac actually think about these ones.
These are just really intricate jokes.
Yes. Anyways.
Does Isaac use ChatGPT?
No.
Thank you. Your humor comes straight from the heart. That's at least respectable.
Better not.
ChatGPT can't.
How do you get that
I
many
agree.
words?
No.
ChatGPT
that's
is not
them
niche
copying
enough.
using one word over and over again. That's good to know, because I do that sometimes and I just don't know.
Yeah, actually, I always like. I always want to write things, but it always comes out in a way that I'm not seeing it. It's like you get that feeling to play Legos, and then when you actually do it, it's like you.
It's like Ninjago, and it's like,
Legos
man,
is
where's
such
like
a perfect
Legos?
representation.
No,
Yeah, and then
I know
it's
what you're
you're just
talking about.
done because if you start doing it, it's like man,
You're like,
this,
what?
I don't know what I'm doing. Like, but
It's like when I go to Walmart.
huh?
Like right when I get there, like.
That's actually true.
You think
I'm
of something
getting a
you
lot.
need before you go, and then you go buy it, and then you leave. That's
Wish
how
that
you
was
shop.
But sometimes you just go.
Sometimes you just go to Walmart.
Me,
Actually.
I never go to go now.
That is actually
Yeah.
good.
I make a list. I make a shopping list.
Check it twice.
Yeah. Or else I actually will forget what I need. 'Cause, like the other day, I went there with Liam, and we just went in there, completely forgot what I needed.
That's bad.
Then you just buy things you don't need.
That's
Yep.
dangerous. I think in line with the honor, a big thing for me is I find when someone is the topic of my poetry, it inspires a profound, I think it starts as appreciation and then turns into honor for them. I think I've really appreciated that process because I'm trying in my mostly my prayer life to be a lot less self-centered. I feel like a lot of times I'm struggling a lot with certain things, and so it just causes my prayers to be very self-focused, and it's difficult to swap from that. And so an outlet for me to take things off of myself has often been poetry, because it actually helps my mind trend towards things that aren't just me, which is, I think, a very helpful tool.
Yeah, for sure.
I actually had a question in relation to fatherhood writing you want us to work on.
Mm.
It's I just want to know what not only what your plan was for it going forward, like now that most of them are completed, but also why or what was significant to you about this season to go into that topic. Because I heard from a couple of people something you mentioned in a poetry meeting, even just about being discerning of where you get your material or like your inspiration. Like I think maybe Niles misunderstood you, but he had mentioned even like being careful about even asking your dad or taking a certain level of wisdom, because there's something that the Lord is doing in relation to fatherhood that might be different than the way it has been before.
Yeah, and it wasn't and isn't anything that is like excluding the parents, obviously.
Yeah, I didn't get
Because
that.
that would completely contradict what
It
I
was
said
not being
about
limited by
yeah asking your parents, because that was never discouraged, but it was a thing to bring to everyone's awareness something that has already been impressed upon every one of us. I think the parents especially, and that being that God is doing something new in the way that his people relate to and function with one another. I mean, this is going right back into our discussion about God and his family culture. So there was a bit of a warning that kind of came unpremeditated to me during that poetry group meeting concerning the advice, experience-based advice that parents may give what it means to be a good mother or father. Because if it's solely based in that kind of experiential wisdom, then you're actually in part missing the point of what
do you mean by experiential?
well, wisdom and advice they have based off of the experience they've had as mothers and fathers. So I began and assigned the assignment with a very broad expectation. So it wasn't like anybody did anything wrong. It was pretty spontaneous, that check I had in my spirit during that time, that poetry group. And I would have very much liked to have been able to share the same in other poetry groups. I just wasn't ever invited to. So. Yeah, thanks to JD. Anyways, my plan is, I don't really have a set plan per se. I know we probably won't be able to read all of the essays because
Was it
that
one
would
per
take a long
poetry
time.
group? Wasn't that the plan?
I never said
I've had
that
poetry
with that.
groups.
Yeah.
I might choose like 3 or 4 to be read.
Hey, practice some honor and some of that comparing way. Just pick. I like these essays. I feel like these get to the heart of what I was
Yeah.
wanting.
I just have to get all of them first.
Salo yummy.
I actually really appreciate your encouragement in our poetry group, because it actually did change what my focus was going to be. I think I was talking with others who had mentioned interviewing their fathers. I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. I might do that. And then after hearing yours, I really tried to broaden my scope of what I did that essay on. And I don't know if you got a chance to read it or not, but I it actually gave me, instead of, it was not a super practical experiential essay at all, actually. It was I think, a much broader look into how the Lord uses fatherhood to cultivate generations and generational culture. And that I would have to reread my own essay, actually, to explain more deeply about what I was trying to accomplish with it. But I really appreciated the advice you did give, because I think it actually allowed me to write something a little more profound than I think I originally had set my scope on.
I was telling the poetry group at that time too that my process in coming up with the subject was interesting, because the first thing that actually came to mind was I wanted you guys to write an essay on community, and it seemed suitable because we were at that point approaching the feast. But then I again kind of felt this check of, well, actually no, because I almost anticipated the way that would go, and I didn't think it was best for things to go that way. I'm being very broad by putting it as I did, but then my next thought was, well, maybe essays on what it means to be a brother and or a sister. And then again, that same check came up. And these previous two subjects seemed like they would have been a lot more relatable, like easier to write about, because it's something that everyone has had, all the young people at least have had direct experience with. But then the mother and father one, which seemed to make less sense because nobody actually had that kind of life experience yet, actually ended up being the one that I thought was going to be the most fruitful subject of inquiry and meditation. As to why that is, I'm not fully sure yet. I was still curious to see how that was going to play out. And am still curious to see how that will play out. I know everybody's mostly finished.
Mostly.
Some people have. But anyways.
I'd like to see how that goes on. I would actually like if you picked a couple, just to go over the ones that you think got the closest, because I think when the essays were due, I actually read a couple, but I did notice that some people hadn't quite turned theirs in yet, so I would appreciate you picking the ones you think rang truest to what your heart was behind it.
Yeah.
I think that'd also be kind of interesting, even in line of what we were saying with like the little nudges of like if you hand selected some and had like the author read it and then express their heart about it, that might actually be a little nudge to that person to share a little more. Whereas previously, if it was like democratically elected in poetry groups or whatever, that person might not, have the ambition to be that person. But if you confirm that there is truth in their writing and encourage them to share their heart with that could actually lead to something very profound. Like thinking, like, if it was someone like Hannah or, whoever who might, be a little less inclined to share, just like a random person.
Sure. Kayla, do you want to pray for us?
Sure. Father, we thank you for this time that we get together. I pray that you would continue to guide us and that we would not fall short in seeking you. Lord, I thank you for the new season of life you are bringing to our attention, and that we would answer your call not in a familiar or in a way that we would be dragging our feet. I thank you for these people that you have selected to meet together, and I pray that our time would always be before and honoring you, Lord. I thank you for your grace and your patience with us as we are continuing to learn to rid ourselves of old ways and become more like you, Lord. I pray that we would continue to press forward and not be discouraged by simple things, and that our eyes would not fall short but to be set on you, Lord, that we would not look elsewhere. I thank you for your goodness to us. I'm truly out of loss of words, Father. I could never fully express my heart to you. But I am so grateful. Amen.
Amen.
I just wanted to share like one more thought that I had. And a little bit late to the topic, but just kind of talking about honoring one another. I was with some thoughts that were coming to me while we were chatting was even learning to recognize how that will come about. Can I even like in some practical ways of I guess we went over that topic, rectifying the names, not long ago in the Analects, and that kind of reminds me of the subject of kind of seeing what the Lord is doing within us. And I think there's going to need to be a lot of, first, making things right within ourselves. So a lot of purging of things that hinder us, or, just kind of looking inwardly. And obviously we don't have to be perfect in order to move on, but there is going to have to be a lot within ourselves and then within our own households. And then it will start to reach out to one another in our ability to engage with one another. So just kind of considering and asking the Lord what those areas within ourselves are, and even within our household physically, biologically, what those things look like. Because I think there's going to be a lot of purpose in, working through the right order of things for things to come more naturally about in our times together, collectively. That was just a thought.
Thank you. Yeah, as always, just continue. I would ask each one of you to continue your prayer for one another and for the time ahead of us in the Culture Center and this newer step or season, I guess, that we're gonna enter into. That not just having to do with events, but also people. We mentioned folks like Corbin and Niles and Peyton, things like that. Just keeping all of that in prayer. And prayer is not just something that you are speaking to God, but even be willing to and expect to be spoken to about things. So always being receiving as well. So